My name is Ty Trumbull, and I handle the content here at Acquira. Some business buyers can be a little too rigid in certain facets of their investment thesis. That can mean that, there's only a certain area, geographic region that they're willing to look in that is maybe close to where they live, or they're only willing to look at a specific industry where they already have experience and they're not willing to entertain buying businesses in a different industry. This can actually create bottlenecks as far as closing a deal. It just takes longer because there are fewer options. But one of the easiest ways and best ways to get around this problem is by looking at more than one business at once. Maybe you have a business that you're very excited about that fits your investment thesis and the location and the industry. But at the same time, you can look at other businesses that are maybe a little outside of your scope to help at least go through the process of vetting the business and making sure that it matches your investment thesis. One acquisition entrepreneur who recently went through this process is Ken Lavertu. Ken is actually a partner at Acquira, and because of that, we get a little bit of extra access to him and his company. So I sat down with Ken to talk about his search process and the benefits that he took from looking at more than one business at once. Here's our conversation. So Ken, welcome back.
Good to be back.
How's the business going?
Great. Yeah, great. We're buying some vehicles today / tomorrow for the company. Going to wrap them with the company logo and our motto and everything. Had some really good one-on-ones with some people recently. Yeah, so it's going really well. Challenging still, but going well.
That's great. So today I wanted to talk to you a bit about what happened before you actually closed on your business, the business search, because I know that you looked at more than one business at the same time before eventually finding A1. Could you talk a bit about just your process overall?
Sure. Yeah. I think when I started, I was probably like most people in their search, they wanted a very specific type of business in a very specific area. And I just took the time to call those businesses and talk to brokers and realized pretty quickly that it was going to be very difficult to find that exact business right in my own backyard. Not that it can't happen, but if I wanted a specific industry with a specific EBITDA number in a specific area, that was going to be very difficult. So I just kind of expanded both geographically and industry-wise. I started kind of widening what I was looking for, but still with the investment thesis of buying a business that was recession resilient. So it included a lot more, many more talks with our business coach, with Daniel and with you guys, with the team about what that would look like and what does it look like to move a family potentially temporarily, or like, would it be 3 months, 6 months, a year? And so I actually, in my search then, I connected with a broker who found an electrical business and a granite business within weeks of each other because he just kept sending me things. And I kind of got bogged down with the electrical business at the beginning and just really started asking for financials. And I stopped my search. But I was given another business to look at, and I just casually kind of passed it to one of our coaches, and he said, you should really go through the exercise of this one and use this as kind of your first pass with the investment committee. And I was a little bit annoyed, like, why I already have a business I'm looking at that I'm probably going to buy. And I had everyone tell me, don't get too emotionally attached to the business. It most likely will fall through, even if it's at the last minute. Nobody was trying to be a pessimist. They were just trying to help me with the realistic side of finding a business and all the ways that it could fall through. And, I just tend to be overconfident maybe. And I said, no, everything looks good on paper. Everything's fine. I'll just go, find a loan and go to the investment. It's fine. And so he just kept pushing back on me and said, listen, I want to see 2 businesses in the IC. Like, I want to see 2 businesses presented at the investment committee. Okay, fine. So I actually started going through the granite business as well as going through the electrical business that was also in Florida. So the businesses were actually 2 hours apart. I was already strategizing that I would find a place to live between both of them because who knows? What if I actually bought two businesses? So I was already looking at real estate and different things in those areas and trying to plan how I would manage a team and what levels of management each specific business would have to be at for that to work, because obviously I couldn't be in two places at once. And how quickly could one of those businesses absorb a general manager, so that I could leave and attend to the one that maybe needed me more.
Mhm.
I don't know how much information. I mean, is this okay just to keep
Yeah,
going?
this is great.
Okay. So then eventually, as I was going through the investment committee, the numbers actually looked a lot better with the granite business, specifically the COVID bump,
Mm.
or COVID like dip was real significant with the electrical business. Um, and at first it's like, well, that's just COVID, but I noticed that the granite business actually grew.
Mm.
But not astronomically so. It was just like it grew steadily over the past 5 years, because I had 5 years of financials, which I didn't have with the electrical business.
Mm.
So it was funny because I just thought, so I actually ended up doing site visits to both businesses. I did one with the granite business one day and one with the electrical business another day.
Wow.
So, and that was a really, really informative, tiring, emotionally exhausting trip. But it became pretty evident the differences between the two businesses and the challenges associated with them. And I still had, the coaches saying, look, just keep going with both of them. Start looking into financing, because financing is really might actually point you in a different direction. And I'm like, oh, I
Mm.
think they're both solid businesses. But I did find out with financing that 98% of the lenders, and I talked to a lot of lenders in this process, did not like the electrical business. They ended
What
up,
didn't they like about it?
yeah, so they didn't like the swing of the numbers, the previous number, because one of the banks said even with COVID, a lot of those contracting businesses like HVAC, plumbing, even electrical, they tended to actually do better
Mm.
with the COVID. And so she's like, it's a little bit of an anomaly, and I'm really not comfortable with it. And they also said they weren't comfortable with the customer concentration.
Mm.
So they had one builder that uses them exclusive. Well, one builder that used them, it was like 30% of their revenue,
Mm.
and then their customer segmentation was really high, like really really high on the custom homes. They did a lot of custom homes, and so the lenders are worried that if the market takes a dip, those really high end homes might dry up, or you might not have that business anymore, which means your business might suffer. So the granite business had the exact opposite. They're fairly well distributed among all the
Mhm.
people that use them, and they have a wide variety of customer segmentation. So they had retail, they have contractors that use them, and then they have like builder programs that use them, and then just referrals. So there's a wide variety of funnels feeding the business, which they liked.
Mhm.
All the lenders were salivating over the granite business. It was just really interesting to have other people, other investment committees within the bank actually look at it and say, and it was very helpful to talk to them. Like, how do they look at risk, right? Maybe I should be
Mhm.
at risk. Um, and eventually I had to make a decision. And right before I made the decision between the two businesses, the electrical business called and they said, hey, I know we're under LOI, but since we don't have exclusivity, we're entertaining other offers. And we just had an offer come in higher than yours, so you need to go higher on your offer. And it was a really easy out for me to say, now
Mhm.
I'm interested. And so they went with the other offer. So it was very smooth and easy for me to back out of it. Because I honestly did like that seller too. Really sharp guy and sharp people that worked for him. But there's a lot more risk. And at the end of the day, they wanted to, retrade the deal. And I really wasn't interested in that. So
Mhm.
and so that's kind of how it was born, like going after two. And I'm really, really happy I went after two, because I ended up going with the one that I didn't think would probably work out, or didn't have as much interest at the beginning. I love this business though, by the way.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I walk in the slab yard and talking to guys and people and other people in the business that come by and meet me, and I'm just really happy here. So
That's great.
yeah.
What role do you think your success coach, your Acquira success coach, and the investment committee played in like looking at both businesses at the same time?
Oh man, I think just everyone at Acquira has a little bit different experience. Some guy might be like Daniel's really strong at the financial like modeling and the, questions to strategically ask the owner about customer concentration or customer segmentation and where you're getting your business. And then, another person that I've talked with is really, really good at high level strategy and planning and, execution. So, I mean, Daniel as the coach, if he hadn't pushed back on me on presenting something for this granite business, because he just kind of smelled something that smelled good, right? Like this could be something that could work. Especially since they've, been through a recession and they've been through COVID and they've grown. Like that's kind of the definition of recession resilient, if there ever is one. So I'm pretty happy about that and about how Acquira kind of utilized their strengths and different personality sets and skill sets to kind of create something that's pretty great and push me in the right direction. And they really like, even Hayden at one point said, you should buy the two businesses and let's figure it out. And then at one point he was like, you should buy one business and let's see how, like, maybe you don't do it, but and here's why. And he gave me reasons why, knowing my personality, knowing kind of how I function and my own weaknesses, my own strengths. And so it's just good to have all that input. Like just pretty, like I never, ever would have entertained buying two businesses on my own ever. So it was good. It was good to have that input. Lots of.
What was I'm sorry for interrupting, but what was the investment committee like do you remember that far back? I know a lot has happened since then.
It was funny because I had, I felt like I had to make a decision really fast. So I did not give the investment committee enough time to prepare a schedule, like to get everyone together. So I ended up doing it in pieces with different people separately in the investment committee, which is not ideal. But I did it because I was like, I got to make a decision. I got to figure this out. And, I could have slowed down, but it's just me, my personality. And it was very interesting because I think they might come across as people who just want to poke holes in the deal. And they do. But especially when I talked with Quinn and another member, they were very quick to poke holes and then talk about mitigating those risks, like right away. Like, hey, it looks like this is happening, but in your market, since they're not really opening up to retail, you have all this customer growth in, Jacksonville. We think you could really do well in that market. And, think about this, think about that. So while they push back in all the areas they should be, they also offered some really great, strategy to help mitigate those risks. If it was something they felt like was a good risk that could be mitigated. Otherwise, it was like, hey, this is a bad deal because, I don't know how you would mitigate this. It's just a lot of risk you'd have to take on. So there's definitely those two. They're just kind of playing those two roles that were really helpful.
Was it helpful did you bring both deals to the investment committee?
Yes, and it required a lot of preparation. So when you asked me what was it like I looked at another presentation that somebody else did, and I plugged in my numbers, plugged in my calculator, my investment thesis, and why I thought it was a good deal. Did a SWOT analysis on it. Did lots of I had a lot of insight though, because I did a lot of site visits, probably more than most people. I went down a lot just to get to know the key players and Eddie and how the business is run. So I had a lot to put in there. So it's just, I probably moved a little bit differently. Most people are going to hit the IC before they do a site visit or even a call. So, and actually that's where I got most of my information before my site visit. I'm getting all this kind of confused, but essentially I did get a lot of information about the business from the seller before the IC. So I would come up with questions and, to be able to answer those IC questions that were supposed to be prepared ahead of time. So that really helped, but it was good to actually have a formal presentation that they could look at, poke holes in. As I'm going through the slide deck, they're saying, hey, back up, let's look at this, let's look at that. So a lot of collaboration.
That's very cool. Yeah. And it's interesting to me, like a lot of people think about business acquisition as maybe a lonely pursuit, but it sounds like through each step you had someone sort of checking you and saying this is a good idea and this is a good investment, whether it's Acquira or the lenders.
So a great example yesterday would be, I had a talk with a coach yesterday just off the cuff, because I sometimes get my head really deep into this process and I start, nothing really stresses me. I don't get stressed out a lot, but it definitely has me concerned about different things. And it was good to have a coach go, okay, let's get above the weeds for a minute. You know, a slowdown is normal when you first acquire a business. Let's figure out why. And let's look at your QOV report and see when there's a slowdown. Okay, this is normal for the business. And what could you be doing now to prepare for the busy season in the fall? And, or, you know, I'm having, you know, this guy wants this big raise and I don't get it. And everyone seems like they want a raise now. And how can we add value after the acquisition and have little wins without, you know, killing the bank? And sometimes I just get all this in my head going. And it's just good to have somebody kind of lift you above it and help you do a 50,000-foot view before you go back down into the mess. And I felt super energized after. I was like, this is great. This is like what I need.
Almost like therapy.
Yeah, and it's not some like distant coach that knows a lot of like textbook information. It's people who have actually acquired businesses and know exactly what I'm going through. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So in the end, you would recommend looking at more than one business as you go through the sourcing process?
I absolutely would. You just don't know. I mean, having a lender last minute say something like, hey, we don't like that you're not bringing, you know, more than 10% to the table, or we don't like this risk or this category, and you're actually finding it's harder to finance that business than another business. It's like, you don't know what's going to stop the deal. And the seller could just, it could be nothing. You could know everything and the seller just go, I changed my mind. Like, I don't, you know, I'll pay the breakup fee or whatever's in the contract. So, you know, you just don't know.
Great. Well, Ken, thanks for taking the time to talk us through this today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Ty.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
Looking at more than one business really does open up a lot more opportunities, whether it's from sourcing and vetting a business or getting financing. You simply have more options. Of course, if you want to begin your own business buying journey, the process begins with our accelerator program. Please feel free to sign up for that either at the link below or at the link on the side of the page. Thank you so much for your time.